Well, hello again, everybody. This is John Norris at Trading Perspectives. As always, we have our good friend, Sam Clements. Sam, say hello.
Hey, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I hope you're doing well.
I am.
I'm glad to hear it. You know, last week or a couple weeks ago, or at least in the news recently, there have been a lot of headlines about the Social Security Administration running out of funds come 2034. I believe that's the new estimate. And Sam, I just have to ask, what does a Gen Z like you? You know, I'm Gen X. What does a Gen Z like you, one, think about Social Security, two, expect from Social Security, and three, think about the Social Security running out of money?
Well, I think to answer the first question, I'm probably the only person under 30 who has even read the report on the Social Security Trust. So I don't think too many people.
There might be
maybe a couple,
others.
Pre-planning their Social Security benefits. But no, I don't think too many people my age are really thinking of it. But it is something. It is a big deal for everyone, and it's something we get this report essentially every year, and it comes back in the news again, and people start to worry about it, and then kind of go on with their business until they hear about it this time next year. So it's just worth talking about, though, and I think reassuring people on the positives and the truth, and then there is still some negatives going on with it. So I think it's worth even younger people to know and be aware of.
Well, since you are a younger person, younger than me at least by a few years. Just a few years. Do you think that there will be Social Security when you hit that magic retirement age of 65?
Look, I do think there will be, but I think good advice for people that are a long time away from drawing on Social Security is don't plan on it. Don't bank on needing that money, and if it comes, great, icing on top of the cake, and if it doesn't, or if it's 50% of what it was supposed to be, what have you, you're not going around expecting that. There is obviously the government has stepped in several times and kind of re-upped the trust and helped refund the Social Security, and I think that's going to be the case again. But for something that keeps becoming an issue and keeps needing more money, I think it's probably not something you should bank on having.
Well, Sam, that leads me to my last question of you, at least for the time being. Do you think the Social Security will go away? That after it's out of money, it's just tough luck?
Well, no, I don't. And I think part of that is, I don't know if it's dishonesty from the media, but the way they're wording it and saying, that they're out of money in 2034 makes it sound like nobody's getting, any sort of income off Social Security at that point anymore. And really it's just, they have essentially a checking and a savings account, and the savings is running out, and they'll still be getting income and payroll taxes that'll be funding up the current beneficiaries. But, I think they, like I said before, the government has stepped in before. This is something that a lot of people do rely on for better or worse, and I think they're, at a point where really they only have one option, that is to fix it and to re-up it if that needs to be the case.
Well, Sam, people hear about the Social Security Trust Fund, and news comes out, we talk about maybe once a year or whatnot. What is actually in the Social Security Trust Fund? I mean, certainly like a lot of other trust accounts or even public pension plans, surely there's a mixture of stocks and corporate bonds, real estate, all kinds of stuff in order for the Social Security Administration to actually grow its money. Certainly, I mean, how's this money invested?
Yeah, they're not getting the 6 to 8% return that you would expect in the stock
market.
What
are they getting?
It's a lot of IOUs from the Treasury, really.
So are you saying that the Treasury Department has just essentially borrowed money from Social Security over the years?
Yeah, I am saying that. And, some people like to quote it as stealing from it, but I don't think that's necessarily completely honest either. They're essentially buying treasuries and for all intents and purposes and making pretty measly interest on it. But, it is a security that they own and that they do get the principal back when they need the money. But, yeah, the government is essentially borrowing from the Social Security. They're borrowing from anybody who buys a treasury, though. So.
So, Sam, I mean, is the Social Security Administration kind of shaped up like let's imagine there's a company, and there's two divisions in the company. One loses a bunch of money every year, and the other one makes a bunch of money every year.
Uh-huh.
And so the people at the corporate level just take money from the profit generator and just give it to the money loser every year.
Well, I think that probably does happen in a lot of companies.
But could you say that that's kind of how Social Security's been set up?
Yeah, I'd say that's
and guys,
good for cocktail conversation.
And guys, going back all the way to 1935, I believe that's when the Roosevelt administration cram this through through the Congress, 1935. You have to have understanding people back then did not, one, live as long, and then two, if they did get to that magic retirement age of 65, they didn't live as long after that.
No, you didn't have people drawn on it for 35 years.
Well, and that's very important to note. And taking a look at some of the data, back in 1950 and 1940, around that time frame, the average life expectancy in the United States was kind of mid to upper 60s.
Yeah.
And the percentage of people making it to 65 was, over half, but not as much as it is fast forward to 2010, 2019, or kind of a mixture of those two dates from where I got the stats. The life expectancy has mushroomed to 78.7 years or thereabouts, and the percentage of people living to 65 has gone up from those low mid-50s to around 70%. And then also, instead of people living 13.9 years after they hit 65, going all the way back into time, people are now living about 20 years after they hit 65.
Yeah.
So more people hitting retirement age and more people living longer after they hit retirement age.
Yeah, and you got to look at the people right now that are hitting that retirement age, the people who are starting to draw on it now and starting to live longer. It's a massive amount of people that are starting to draw on it, where at this time, the amount of people funding into Social Security is not as much as it has been compared to the amount of people drawing on it. And that's really kind of the crux of the issue is, a lot more people are drawing on it for a lot longer. And what that does is you start to run out of money.
Well, the thing is, with the statement or the prediction that the Social Security Trust Fund will run out of money in 2034, I'm kind of doing some math, going back and taking a look at live births all the way back to 1900 and all that stuff, because, I'm a spreadsheet dork. I found out something pretty interesting, that starting in the year 2030, more people will be hitting 35 than 65.
Yeah.
And I find that to be important because 35 kind of, you're hitting your career earning stride, you're really taking off right there. And then 65 is the traditional year and people start retiring. And then also in the year 2030, the first of the baby boomers is hitting 84, 85 years of age,
yeah.
Which means, as you've heard me say this before, starting in that magic year when more people are hitting 35 as opposed to 65, the first of the baby boomers, Sam, this is indelicate, but I'm going to make it as delicate as I can. And then that year, the first of the baby boomers start hitting their actuarial ceiling with increased rapidity. I think that's the best way of putting it.
I think that is a good way to put it.
And this mismatch of more people hitting 35 as opposed to 65 lasts all the way out to about 2052.
Yeah.
Seriously. So
it's a huge window.
It's a huge window. It's kind of like that same window that we had in the 80s and 90s as the baby boomers were starting to hit their peak earnings years and what have you. So we're going to have the same period where those baby boomers hitting their peak earnings years, I hate to say it, they start dying off, and then Gen Y and Gen Z starts coming in, and all of you people, I'm calling you people, start hitting their career full stride. And I think, what was it Twain said about the reports of his demise were greatly exaggerated?
Yeah.
I do feel that way about Social Security, and I do think that that's going to be a major story about more people, that 2030, more people hitting 35 as opposed to 65. I also do think that the Social Security Administration, if they want to do something, they can. There's still a few levers to pull. Obviously, no one wants to see an increase in the payroll tax, but they could do that. They could also increase the amount that gets taxed. Right now, it's
it's not much.
It caps out and kind of in the middle of 100s. They could increase that. No one loves doing that,
but nobody would really bat an eye at that either. I'm saying a slight increase there is going to be a lot more palatable than saying you don't get to start drawing on your benefits till 70 or something like that.
Without a doubt.
In terms of ways to get more money into the Social Security is what I'm really saying is that increasing a little bit of taxes on the upper end of people.
Yeah, and so that'll probably happen. I'd be surprised if that doesn't happen sooner rather than later. And then also perhaps increasing the full retirement age, or maybe not letting people start drawing on it as soon as they can now. These are all potential levers that the Social Security Administration can do, and likely will have to do, because, Sam, I can't envision a scenario in my mind where, Heck with it. Social
Sorry.
Security just going away.
You paid into it for 30 years, but
we're even cutting benefits significantly. I cannot imagine it.
Yeah.
This is the fifth rail or whatever they call it. You just don't mess with that.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine anyone wanting to mess with that. You sit there and say, do you want to cut Medicaid, Medicare, all this? So we want to balance the budget. Okay, well, so what are we going to cut? Social Security? I've yet to ever hear anyone say, no, I want to cut it. Because you're right, people do have some ownership in it because they've been paying into it for years.
Yeah.
And, at the 11th hour saying, no, we're not going to get it. Well, maybe Bezos or some other people say, I don't need it. But the vast majority of Americans will sit there, don't you dare touch that.
Yeah. Even people who are relatively well off, they have retirement income from other sources. That's still... Those people that were well off paid a lot into the system, and naturally, if you pay into it, you're probably going to want at least some of your money out of it.
so this is one of those ones that they come out with this news story every year. We talk about it. People are very concerned about it, probably more so this year than ever because of all the deficit spending Washington's doing right now. How do we pay for all this? I mean, something's got to get cut somewhere. Trust me, they will find other ways to cut things other than Social Security, in my estimation.
Yeah, it seems like that's an easy way to lose voters if you start telling people you're going to vote for something. That means they get less money when they retire.
That's a real easy way to lose voters. Now, on the flip side of that, I don't think there's going to be a ton of political appetite to all of a sudden drastically increase Social Security benefits because the average American is kind of catching on. They go, I would. Who wouldn't want more benefits? However, where's that money going to come from?
Yeah,
it has to come from somewhere.
It seems like it's a common thread for people, like I said, not close to pulling on Social Security to say, I'm not really going to plan on this money as like a core piece of my retirement because, like you said, even if benefits aren't growing a lot, there's a somewhat decent chance that you're not getting as much money as you thought you would when you retire.
Well, Sam, when I was your age, mid-20s, I didn't think about Social Security whatsoever. I thought, that's not even going to be there when I'm there. I'm not going to plan on it, count on it. Now, when you get to my advanced state of life at 53, you start, kind of do think about it a little bit.
Sure.
I'm not sitting there saying I'm relying on it, but,
you paid into it for 30 years.
Paid into it and started thinking, okay, well, gee whiz, we will have a little bit of money coming in and all that stuff. So it does factor into the equation. Even people that have had a relatively successful career like I have had or arguably have had, I'm expecting Social Security. People your age are probably going to be expecting Social Security. And the older you get, the more you really expect to get it.
Yeah.
And it does come down to a sense of fairness. I paid into it. I want to get my money back.
Yeah.
Don't stiff me here at the 11th hour.
Yep.
And so, the federal government's going to have to figure out a way to make all this work. And the best way of doing it, you're probably going to have to increase some payroll taxes. But the best way, in my estimation, is doing everything that it can, Sam, to grow the government.
Yeah.
Because not grow the government, grow
that's the opposite.
Grow the economy, because that is a perfect one-to-one positive correlation of one. The stronger the economy, the more tax receipts the government will get.
I remember classes on this essentially that I took in college, and it was essentially, we're like we talked about, there's more money being drawn on it now than being put in it, and so you either have to start increasing the taxes that you're going to bring in more money. One way you can do that is increasing the tax rate. The other way is, like you said, growing the economy, growing the money that is our total GDP. And then I think the third way is just growing the population, through either immigration or the way that China's struggling with right now.
It's pay people more to have more babies.
Incentivize it more.
Yeah, and so, I wouldn't be surprised if that might be another thing that the government does.
Yeah.
The more people you have paying into the system, the more money it will have.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing. That's probably a topic for another time. It's like, gee whiz, what can we do in order to get more people to participate in the economy? Because more younger people right now are opting out of the workforce. I guess that's one way of putting it.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What do you think about that potential for a future topic out there?
I think that's a good idea, and I think we've always talked about essentially almost every episode we've had goes back to incentivizing something, whether it should be or not, or how it is now. And that's something that does need to be incentivized, especially if we are wanting to continue to have Social Security and have it continue to be fully funded and not people getting partial benefits, is you have to increase the income. And we've essentially talked about the three main ways you can do that: raising tax rates, raising the overall tax income, and then raising the amount of people paying into it. So incentivizing those is something that I think we need to continue to talk more and more of, and disincentivizing the things that take away from it.
Well, it's kind of as you and I have talked, that which gets measured gets done, and people respond to incentives. Be they positive or negative, they will respond. Essentially, people will do what they get paid to do.
Yeah.
And so if we incent people correctly to have more children, guess what?
Yeah, if you
have more kids.
If you have huge tax breaks for having a child that, for 40 plus years will be paying into the system, it seems like it could be worth it to the government to let you write off a couple $1,000 in taxes.
And some people would say that, having kids isn't necessarily really doesn't have anything to do with the tax code. Well, it does and it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's having that, not that first child or even the second child, but having that third or potentially the fourth.
Yeah.
If all of a sudden you're getting bigger breaks, you might be more prone to have that additional child.
Sure.
That sounds so.
And I hope we're doing the right sort of incentives, though, and not,
so cold-hearted.
Not an extra week of PTO. Or
Sam, you should have 3 or 4 kids to get that extra benefit.
Sweet tax cuts.
I don't think. That sounds a little weird. Maybe we don't talk about that. They're going back to the issue at hand. 2034. Social Security going bankrupt. We're running out of its trust fund. I'm going to tell you, Sam, it's not going to happen.
It's not. Yeah, it's not that big of an issue.
It's just simply not going to happen. It's the government's just borrowing them from itself anyhow. So that's all it is, and it's just not that big a deal. Don't lose any sleep over it. No politician's going to try to cut your benefit. If they do, they won't be the politician for very much longer.
Give them 2 more years, and that'll be the end of it.
So I just, for people that are worried about that, I'm not trying to be cavalier about this. We've got a lot of deficit spending, a lot of red ink. However, I do think this is one area that I don't think that people have to lose too much sleep over, because really it's just way too popular. Now, with that being said, the government is going to have to figure out some ways to fund it a little bit better and maybe slow down growth in some other areas of its income statement.
Yep, completely agree.
So with that, guys, thank you all so much for listening. We always love to hear from you. Also, if you have any comments or questions, by all means, please drop us a line at tradingperspectives@oakworth.com, or you can leave us a review on the podcast outlet of your choice. As always, if you're interested in hearing more or reading more of what we have to say or how we think, please go to oakworth.com and take a look underneath the Thought Leadership tab. Sam, any last pearls of wisdom about Social Security here today?
That's all I got. Don't bank on it.
That's all I've got today, too. Y'all take care.